Welcome to Full-Time Yoga Teacher Podcast. My name is Reika and I am your host. I hope you are taking care of yourself. I am recording this intro on January 25th, 2026 on a Sunday. And to be honest, I'm feeling a little bit heavy due to the current situation that's happening in the United States. And I just wanted to name that I am not an expert on politics and it's not a topic I choose to talk about it publicly. But I do want to say that I come with little heaviness as I record this, and I hope everyone listening are doing what you need to do to take care of yourself, using the tools of yoga to bring yourself back into balance so that you can see things clearly. Like what Yoga Sutras of Patanjali say, we want to clean the lenses that we see the world out of so we can see things clearly. From a balanced state, we are able to clearly, with inner knowing, choose to act in a way that is in alignment with who we are, which also means action that is in alignment with the world, the community, the people, all living beings. So whether choosing to step away from social media and news might be the right action for you for now, or whether choosing to show up on your yoga mat or meditation cushion to bring yourself back to balance is the right action for you for now, or whether coming together in your community and talking, or maybe showing up on protest, calling your representatives, choosing to donate to an organization, or whatever it is that is the right action for you for now. I hope you can use the tools of yoga to find what it is that you can do to bring yourself back into balance so that you can see things clearly. So with that, I want to start by sharing a little bit about last couple of weeks. So last 2 weeks, I have taken a break from releasing weekly podcast episodes. I started this podcast 2 years ago, and I've been releasing new podcast episodes every Monday for 2 years straight. And last 2 weeks, which was the first, or I guess the second and third Mondays of 2026, was the first 2 weeks I've taken a break. I've taken a break from having a strict weekly releasing schedule. And I was actually traveling to Oakland, California. So I live in Long Beach, so Southern California, but I traveled to Northern California, Oakland, to train with my dear teacher, Annie Carpenter. She had a 10 days of intensive advanced training for yoga teachers, and I decided to go join that training in person for the full 10 days. So that is one of the reasons why I decided to take a break from releasing an episode. I really wanted to fully immerse myself in this training, this continuing education training, and be in community of yoga teachers and yoga practitioners and the people who are passionate about yoga, and really be a student without putting my teacher's hat on. I took my teacher's hat for the 10 days and I put on my student's hat, and I loved it. We had a 2-hour-long asana practice every morning, and in the afternoon we had 4 or 5 hours of just workshopping and discussions and looking at bodies and practice teaching and thinking about teaching in a deeper way. And that was really, really fun for me, and it was really what I needed. So I feel very full and recharged and re-inspired from that 10 days of intensive yoga training experience I had in Oakland with my teacher, Annie Carpenter. I'm very grateful, and I understand that I am also so privileged to be able to take time off and go immerse myself in yoga teaching. It's not something anybody can just get up and do. So I'm really grateful that I had a chance to do that. I'm really grateful I have a job that I could take time off to go immerse myself in continuing education. I am so grateful that people in my life and my students and my colleagues and my managers and bosses see the value and appreciate that I continue to educate myself. And I am grateful I have the time, space, and resources in my life to be able to do this. So I know it's not something everybody can do, but even if it's just an afternoon workshop or a weekend workshop or even 1 hour of online webinar so that you can continue to learn, so you can continue to stay curious in this field of yoga, I really encourage you to do so. I believe a recipe for reducing the risk of burnout and being able to continue to teach for longevity is to continue to learn and also continue to educate yourself and continue to feel inspired to share what we have learned to our community. So it was such a great time. I really loved all the people I got to share that 10 days with. So thank you so much to my teacher, Annie Carpenter, to the community of Ness Yoga in Oakland, and also Ellen. I just want to say she have let me stay in her cottage in the back of her house for that 10 days. So thank you for everybody who made this happen. I really appreciate it, and I really don't take it for granted that I got to spend 10 days completely immersed in yoga and yoga training. Quick little announcement is that I have a retreat in Nicaragua coming up. It's happening end of July until beginning of August. It is a ethical yoga retreat, meaning it's not just a yoga retreat. You go to this beautiful beachside town in Nicaragua to be able to enjoy the beauty of the ocean, the tropical weather, the waves, and also we get to know the community who live there and do some activities with them, some art workshop with the women from the community, as well as go volunteer at the after school program with children. And part of the money you pay for the retreat will be donated directly to the local grassroots organizations. So if you're interested in this retreat, I'll put the information on the show notes so you can go ahead and click and find out more. I would love for you to join the retreat. And for this week's podcast episode, I am excited to bring back my teacher, Aimee Echo. Aimee Echo is a teacher here in Long Beach that I really, really respect. I used to practice Ashtanga Yoga 6 days a week at her Ashtanga Shala here in Long Beach, and she is full of knowledge and full of experiences, and we are so lucky to have Aimee here in Long Beach. She just has so much knowledge. She has the quality of a teacher that I really respect, which is she loves to learn. She never stopped learning. She is always in a different training program, taking different courses to really fully dive deep into learning this lineage of yoga. She has a decades of study in Krishnamacharya lineage in Ashtanga Yoga and Vini Yoga. And Aimee is trained yoga therapist as well as authorized level 2 Ashtanga yoga teacher. She is a yoga educator devoted in preserving the integrity of classical yoga while making its tools accessible to modern practitioners. She's the owner of the Community Yoga Club, home of Ashtanga Yoga Long Beach, where she leads a daily Mysore-style Ashtanga yoga program and offers individual yoga therapy. I think I am so lucky to have Aimee as one of my main teachers. I have learned so much from her, especially in topic of Yoga Sutra. I go to her weekly Yoga Sutra studies, and this has been a crucial part of my weekly schedule. I just love learning sutra with her community, and I have gained so much from her teaching. And she is a teacher I really, really admire and look up to and strive to be like someday. So I hope you enjoy the conversation we had together for this podcast episode. We talk about where the yoga is going in the modern day world and difference between Western perspective of yoga and anatomy versus Indic philosophy perspective on yoga and yoga anatomy. And she brings up such a great point, and I also got to ask her really good questions about being a teacher and having this responsibility as a teacher. We also talk about the difference between group yoga classes that happens at yoga studio versus more of a one-on-one individualized approach to yoga that Aimee had. So it was such a great conversation. I hope you enjoyed this conversation I had with Aimee, and I will speak to you on the other side. Welcome back, Aimee, to Full-Time Yoga Teacher Podcast. I'm so excited that I get to have you back on the podcast and share this conversation with everyone. And I just want to quickly say that to all the listeners that Aimee is one of my favorite yoga teacher, and I learned so much from her. I go to her weekly Yoga Sutra circle discussion group. And you're just full of knowledge. So I'm just so excited that I get to have you and have a nice in-depth conversation. How are you doing and where are you logging in from today?
I want to say thank you for having me, and I will come anytime to hang out with you on your podcast. I am in my kitchen in Long Beach, California.
And it's actually, I had no idea it was going to rain today. So it's a rainy, cloudy day here in Long Beach today.
Yeah, it is. It's a little gloomy.
Mm-hmm. And, I think this conversation came at the right time because I've been having a discussion to myself, by myself on this podcast a couple times. During my intro and outro and also my end of the year recap, I've been talking about how the shift is happening in the yoga world. And, I've been kind of reflecting on that. And I feel like this conversation might fit really well with some of my own solo discussion I've been having in my head. And the discussion or the thoughts that I've been noticing, like a trend of where the yoga world is going that I've been kind of talking about on this podcast, is that fitness has become very popular and there are a lot more emphasis on fitness. A lot of fitness classes, group fitness classes, but also yoga classes becoming more fitness-like.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the trend I have been noticing and I have been seeing. So I think this will be a great discussion we can talk about. And have you also noticed the similar kind of trend that I've been noticing as well?
I don't know if it's really new or current even. It feels like it might have been the case for a while. I feel like as yoga teacher trainings and even yoga therapist trainings become more popular, there seems to be a little bit of a westernization or a science perspective or even a medicalized perspective or a exercise science perspective, sports perspective, fitness, sports medicine perspective that's starting to become pervasive in the yoga trainings, I think. And that might be why that's showing up out in the classes. Or maybe not. Maybe it's all Huberman's fault.
Well, you've been in the yoga world for way longer than me, so that's interesting to hear you say that it's not maybe a trend of now, but maybe it's been happening for some time now. So that was interesting for me to hear.
It feels like almost everybody's entry point is group fitness. It's called yoga, but these classes are really asana-based group fitness classes. They almost always have been. And they're wearing the language of yoga. And which is, I often say this to you, it's not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing. It's just a little bit inaccurate and there's a lot of misperceptions. And you and I had talked a little bit about perspectives when we were texting back and forth, and how what you see yoga as depends on the lens that you're looking through, right? So if you're coming from a sports or a fitness background, you're going to see it as sports or fitness, a way to exercise the body. If you're coming at it from a medical background, like if you're a nurse or a doctor, or you're going to see it maybe through that kind of a lens, right? Where we're talking a little bit more in-depth anatomical or physiological perspective, right? Like how the body works, how the body functions. From a Western perspective, because that's the education. So a lot of times when we're looking at this yoga that we all are doing and teaching, the lens that we're looking through a lot of the times determines how we use the tool. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally.
And
I can
that's
think of
my favorite. That's my favorite phrase. Does that make sense? I always say that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and like I feel like a good analogy I can think of is how Ayurveda see health
Yeah.
versus how traditional Chinese medicine might see health versus
Yes.
how maybe Western medicine see health. It's going to be different perspective. It's going to be through different lenses.
Yeah. One of the analogies that I often use in class, and you've heard me say it before, is if we just use a map program. I'm not going to endorse any particular map program. But, you go on your phone and you click on blank blank maps or other blank blank maps or the other app. So some map application, and you type in your location and your destination. And typically it'll come up with several different routes, right? And then there's a destination, right? You're where you're located now and where you're going, that destination.
Mm-hmm.
All these different routes, different colors. And then if you click on a route, you can get the actual instructions for that particular route. If you click on
Mm-hmm.
another route and you try to use the instructions for the first route, you're going to get very lost. All of the
Mm-hmm.
paths lead to the same destination, but the instructions are different. And so I think
Mm-hmm.
this is one of the ways, like if we're talking from a sports or a exercise science perspective, sports medicine, exercise science perspective, and you're looking at the asanas, the shapes that we make and the things that we do, you're going to have different instructions and different directions that you'll go. If you're looking at it from an
Mm-hmm.
Indian or an Indic knowledge system perspective, you're going to have different instructions and different directions that you'll go. You may or may not end up in the same destination, depending on how this works, right?
Yeah, yeah. Another thing that reminds me of is that even studying the Yoga Sutras with you, Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, there's different teachers and different narration of the books come from different perspectives.
Yeah.
And how I remember you mentioning it's so important to learn from one teacher and one perspective, or one school and one perspective first, at least, so you really get a good understanding of the teachings. And
Yeah.
maybe then after you can kind of broaden your perspective and you can kind of understand what everybody's saying is kind of the same thing, but from different perspectives. But I think until you have that good understanding of one perspective, it's just going to be confusing to learn from multiple different perspectives and schools and lineages.
Exactly. That is exactly it. It's like if you get
Mm-hmm.
halfway through the studies and then you switch to a different route with different instructions and different directions, it can be the same text, but it's going to be completely confusing. And then, this is, I think, a lot of the reason why the older texts feel not as meaningful, not as practical, because they're not being explained from a practitioner's point of view as well. It's more like
Mm-hmm.
academic study or linguistic study, even like translating the Sanskrit, or
Mm-hmm.
religious scholars, these kind of things. And so, a lot of the time, these old texts that are supposed to be syllabus for teachers to teach from become completely,
Mm-hmm.
well, first of all, there's that. It's a syllabus for teachers to teach from, not a handbook for people
Mm-hmm.
to learn from.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one
Mm-hmm.
confusion straight off the bat. But then, if we've got this, if you're not trying to learn language, if a person who's rooted in linguistics or translation is giving you the translation of the Sanskrit and you're expecting to understand yoga, but they've never practiced yoga, chances are you're not going to get a good understanding of yoga. You might be able to translate the words and
Mm-hmm.
know what the words mean individually, but the context might be sorely missing. Maybe not, but we don't know.
Mm-hmm.
It's just
Mm-hmm.
my perspective, because I definitely
And
have
I
one.
think, but that's why we're interested in hearing your perspective today. But I feel like I keep going back to the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali. But like I remember when I took my first 200-hour teacher training, they required us to read the whole thing before the training even started. And I just remember reading through the whole thing, and it went pretty fast because they're short. Like
Yeah.
each line, the sutras are pretty short. But what I got out of just reading on my own for the first time is like 0.0001% of the book. And like you said, it's a guidebook. It's meant to be studied with a teacher. So like the
Yeah.
experience I have learning with you, sutra by sutra, also in community with other people there
Yeah.
who also like pitch in and share their experiences. The book and the teaching comes alive, and it's so interesting, and there's so many nuances, and so many amazing little things about the book and the teaching that comes alive. Whereas like if you just read it on your own, it's almost like the teaching doesn't come alive, and we're not able to get the depth meanings behind all the teaching if we just try to read it on our own.
Yeah. I think my first experiences were I was reading it on my own and trying to memorize certain sutras. And I did. I had them memorized flat out, by rote, right? And then my first big experience was I took a weekend workshop at Yoga Works. It was like a Friday, Saturday, Sunday, or maybe it was just Saturday, Sunday. I can't remember, but it was the whole text in one weekend. And so basically it was like an audio version of what I had already read, but there wasn't a lot of understanding. And I think you've heard me say I came out learning one word from the whole weekend. A good word. It was the word samyama, which is from the third chapter of Yoga Sutras. You don't have to talk about what it means, but so I came out with one good word the whole weekend. I think
Yeah,
that
it's just
the way that people are describing it now, when in my class, which you've gone over with me a few times, I think the rules for a sutra, when we talk about what makes a sutra, they're like zip files. They're meant to be unpacked, and they're meant to be unpacked with a teacher. They're mnemonics, right? They're little tiny aphorisms that we can use to remember something, right? Like I before E, except after C. It's like that, right? So that every time, if I just say, "Oh, I'm going to teach you how to spell," and I say I before E, except after C. Well, how are you supposed to know what that means? That's very confusing unless I say, "Okay, see this word? It has an I and an E. And this other word has a C. So when you're going to spell and you need to use that, then it gets unpacked." So and maybe that's too simple of of an aphorism to use. Maybe I need to pick a more complex one because now I'm like, oh, that was pretty easy to understand. But it is like that. They're like these audio files, really. They're not even supposed to be read. They're learned orally. They're sonic. They're audio files that are supposed to like unblock a teaching for you. Yeah.
And I feel like there's also correlation to that with asana practice too. I think you have said it many times of like, it's so important to have teacher. I mean, it doesn't maybe have to be every day, but there's somebody that you can come back to who can see you in a way that you can't see yourself. Like to kind of see your blind spots, notice the things you can't notice yourself, that can point out where you might need to work on or where you might want to bring your awareness to. Because sometimes when you just do your own practice, similar with Yoga Sutras, like there's maybe you don't get the whole picture.
The thing I think that's different about, I've been thinking about yoga studios versus yoga schools. And what yoga studios are like little meals, right? You go in, somebody's prepared this beautiful recipe for you, and they're going to serve it up for you in an hour. And it gets eaten, and it's probably great. You have a good time. Maybe sometimes you don't. Maybe sometimes you get food poisoning, but it's like a mini meal. And what the yoga school does is teaches you how to cook for yourself. And then on top of that, the teacher sees you and says, this is the type of nourishment that's going to help you heal. This is the type of nourishment that's going to help you grow. Because typically, if we can't see outside of, we need that outside of the picture viewpoint because we tend to cause our own problems. This is what it says, right? In the Yoga Sutras, right? We tend to cause our own problems. Like attracts like with us. And so, if you ask somebody to pick a meditation object, they'll go, "Oh, I love fire. I'm going to meditate on a candle." And they're like, a person who's pitta. And also, this is what's happening, I think, out in the world a little bit. It's like, oh, I like hot yoga, but I'm pitta. And then I'm going to follow it up with a kombucha that's heating, and then people are getting burned out, right? So when we don't have an outside reference to point us in a direction with asana, we tend to move towards only our strong points and stay away from our weak points. Or we tend to live in this world of like other people giving us meals that may or may not be right for us because they're not individually designed. So of course I'm going to say, I think you need a teacher. Yeah.
Yeah. And like I have so many questions in those cases, which I agree with you completely that like we need the outside perspective. I think that's the word you used before. And
Yeah.
that's the teacher's role. And that I feel like it's a pretty big responsibility for a teacher. And but how do you become a teacher like that? Because you are that for so many of us, and that's not something you can learn in 200-hour teacher training. So
No.
like I'm sure
Yeah.
life experience and teaching experience and all of that comes together. But what do you think is a quality of a teacher who can take on that role?
You know what I'm going to say? It's a student. It's a quality of studentship. And you knew I was going to say that. I learned from my teacher, Chase Bossart, who is a long time, 19 years he spent with his teacher, Dejikachar, who was Krishnamacharya's son. And what Chase told me is that Krishnamacharya didn't prefer the title guru. Guru has a different connotation when you're in India. It's much more simple. It's not this, it doesn't have the Western patriarchal theology bit laid over the top of it. So, you can have a dance guru that teaches you your dance class, or you can have this other kind of guru that's like leading your whole path, right? But there's this other word, acharya. It's right there in in Krishnamacharya, right? That's what it says, Krishnamacharya. Acharya is the last part of his name. And what acharya means is somebody who has walked the path and continues on the path. And so there's this, it kind of connotates trail guide, like they've walked the terrain and they continue to walk the terrain. They know the terrain and they're helping the people that are following in their footsteps. And they walk it again and they
That's
walk it again.
mm,
Yeah.
mm. That's very beautiful. And I want to ask you, when did you feel like you were ready to take on that role? Or did you ever feel ready?
I doubt it daily. I remember I remember the gravity. I remember the gravity of my teacher giving me my authorization to teach, right? I remember that day going, whoa, I really have to know my stuff now. I am going to be responsible for other people. So I think my real studentship started in that moment. Like that was when it was like, okay, so if I'm going to be responsible for other people's learning and well-being and, and sharing this tradition that is not, from my home country. It's this old Indic knowledge system, Indian system. So like the care and the precision, like I wanted to make sure that I was we were talking in my class with my Veda teacher about cultural appropriation. And the one thing that came to mind was, is it appropriation or is it appropriateness? And it was it was so very important for me to be appropriate in my teaching and honor the roots and work really, really hard to be a good student. I think there was this like degree of, I felt really honored and I didn't take it lightly in any way. I was very committed and serious about it, even though I tend to, as a person, make a lot of jokes and kind of have lived in ways that are a little bit, woo, rock and roll. But like the seriousness of my dedication to the yoga and the yoga studies was like, as soon as he said, you can teach this method, it was like a weight that I was honored to carry. I don't know. That was a lot.
I think that's so um They're beautiful. I think I'm such a baby teacher compared to you, but I also feel the weight or like the responsibility. I really want to honor the tradition, and I really want to keep learning so I can provide the best teaching that I can provide, or I can be the best teacher or be the best person that I can be. Because I also don't take it very lightly, and I think that's what comes through from you is that I respect you so much because you are always learning, you love learning, and you're
Yeah.
also so generous sharing your learning with us to your community. And I think that's such a great quality of a teacher, is somebody who continues to learn. They're always evolving. I think that's so
I
important.
I think it's the most important quality is to continue, not ever think you're done. The minute you
Mm.
feel like, I know it all, that's the day you should quit.
So I think what makes you such a great but also unique teacher is that you are, like you said earlier, authorized Ashtanga teacher. But also you went on to go on to continue educating yourself as a yoga therapist.
Yes.
And now you're a yoga therapist and also an authorized Ashtanga teacher. So I'm curious, like what made you want to continue the path in yoga therapy?
Serving more people was,
Mm.
Ashtanga yoga is the traditional Ashtanga yoga. While it can be modified to suit any person, right? It really suits people that are already in healthy bodies. It's really for folks that are the traditional Ashtanga yoga is really best suited for people who are in bodies that are pretty healthy, not a lot of problems. They're in like a maintenance mode of health, and they have some bandwidth to dedicate their lives a bit, changing their lifestyle a bit to and be devoted to the yoga. Whereas a lot of people are using yoga to just support their lives. And I should delete that word just because it's a really, really important way to use the tool of yoga,
Mm.
to support your life. So there are people that love yoga that have these giant lives. They, have children and they work long hours, or maybe they don't work long hours, but their lives are just really big and they don't have the time to dedicate to a lot of study and to minimum 2 hours a day on the mat, and or their body is there's some kind of way that they need some kind of recovery. Maybe they have a broken
Mm.
ankle. Maybe they have diabetes. Maybe they have an injury in their back. Maybe they have some kind of depression or, perimenopause or menstrual difficulties, or if they have problems with eating disorders or, you know, osteoporosis, all of these different ways that the body can be in need of some kind of recovery. That's where the yoga therapy comes in, right? So
Mm.
we have these different ways we can use the yoga. We can use the yoga to come into like a maintenance mode, a healthy baseline. And that would be, helping get some kind using the yoga therapeutically. We have this way that we can use the yoga, stay well, to get some breathing and moving and some strength and mobility, and possibly some pacification or some kind of nourishment out of the yoga. That would be more in the line of like yoga studio yoga. And then with
Mm.
traditional Ashtanga, it's a bit more of like, even if my body's not completely healthy, I've got this bandwidth and this interest, and I'm ready to go deeper. And I'm
Mm.
ready to change my sleep patterns, and I'm ready to change my eating patterns a bit to support. And I'm ready to get up early in the morning and show up in the yoga school for a couple hours and really do some, work. And
Mm.
that would be like more along the lines of traditional Ashtanga.
Did you start to get more students that you felt, I guess, a type of students that you felt like, oh, I want to
More
educate myself more tools, have more tools in my teaching? What got you? started and even considering going in back to yoga therapy school? Was it a I guess, community led? Like you were starting to get the students that you felt like they could benefit from more yoga therapy tools?
There were, I was teaching traditional Ashtanga, Mysore-style, and I would have people that were coming that needed, beyond the modified sequences. So instead of just adapting the traditional Ashtanga to fit somebody, I needed to start from a point that was completely different. Tools, I could work around those tools, but I really wanted to go get the whole picture. I wanted to know what it looked like to help somebody come out of problems in a really thorough way. Not that you can't do it with the traditional Ashtanga, because you can, but what I was coming to see was if you can use all of the tools of yoga, chanting, meditation, pranayama, simple pranayamas, of course, to bring the person back into balance, they may or may not have some bandwidth to start to change their life a little bit more and be interested in going deeper in the yoga. If they're not, awesome. I help them. If they are, awesome. I help them.
Mm-hmm.
So it was just really expanding my toolkit. And
Mm-hmm.
also, I am really, really interested in Krishnamacharya's full teachings.
Mm-hmm.
And what I was seeing is that, if we look at Krishnamacharya's students, he gave them each a different piece. And
Mm-hmm.
it seems like there was some contention for some time, or it was presented that there was some contention for some time of, well, this piece is better than that piece. This piece is better than that piece. But how it looked to me was it was one big puzzle,
Mm-hmm.
and all of the pieces were necessary. And again, teachings are so broad and deep, immense, endless, really, that it's hard to have more than one piece, right? It takes a lot of study and a lot of work to
Mm-hmm.
have more than one piece. In 2016, when I was in Mysore with Sharat, my teacher, Sharat Joyce, he was doing a teacher's course where he just invited teachers to come and do intensive practice with him. And I guess you could call it a teacher training, but everybody was already teachers, right? Student training, teacher student training. And at one point during one of the days where he was talking to us, he said, you need to decide what kind of teacher you want to be. Do you want to be a doctor? Do you want to be a nurse? What do you want to do with this? And it hit me, that's a really interesting way of thinking about delivering the yoga. It's medicine, right? But do you want to
Mm-hmm.
be a support person, or do you want to be the one that's prescribing? And so, having the yoga therapy in my toolkit, I really felt like I could be a better prescriber.
That makes sense. I think a lot of people I speak to have a very, very misperception about Ashtanga yoga and Mysore
Yeah.
room. And I have a feeling you probably how you navigate your Mysore room might be different than
Yeah.
other Ashtanga shala and how the Mysore rooms are done. So maybe can you share a little bit about how you teach
Yeah.
might be different. It may look different. It may feel different than what people stereotypically think what Ashtanga is. And also curious about do you offer the yoga therapy tools in that Mysore room setting, or is that something completely separate that you do in a one-on-one setting?
So, how the Mysore room typically looks is a student comes and I get to know them, and I start them with the tools that are best suited for them. So if that would be primary series, it's primary series of Ashtanga yoga. So that means on day one, we would start learning how to breathe and learning how to do sun salutations. And then we would do a little finishing. And then the next day, they would come back and they would get a little more. right? So it's built slowly, piece by piece.
Mm-hmm.
And so my Mysore room includes yoga therapy. So if somebody is not healthy enough to do a Surya Namaskara, to do a sun salutation, then we would bring them up to the level of health that they would be able to if that is in their best interest. So what it looks like is you'll have people in it. So I'm operating it in the same way. But if it's somebody that I'm seeing for yoga therapy, I see them one on and we do a really in-depth intake. And then I determine what would be the most helpful for them at the time. And I create a yoga practice for them. And then they can either come and practice it in the Mysore room, which I prefer, because then I get to see what's really happening, or I can give
Mm-hmm.
them the practice and they can take it home and do it on their own. I write it down for them and explain it, and they can do it on their own. And then we meet back again, whether
Mm-hmm.
2 or 3, sometimes 4, sometimes 6 weeks later. I've found really actually incredible to have the yoga therapy students in the room with the Mysore students, with the traditional Ashtanga students, because it's really truly everybody getting to see that anything is okay and anything is possible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Wherever you're at is where you're at. And, I really, really try to foster this neutral environment. Postures that are more complex are not, there's no hierarchy in my
Mm-hmm.
room. I know that that goes on out in the wild, in the, Ashtanga room, where there is this perceived progression in the series, like
Mm-hmm.
that there's, advanced series. And I think a lot of times people that have very easy, talented bodies can go very far in asana and yet not far at all in the yoga. So
Mm-hmm.
I don't even like the word advanced
Mm-hmm.
series, but that said, it's inspiring for people to see people with, bodies that are easier
Mm-hmm.
or well trained. Some of my students have been practicing for 20 years. It's inspiring for a new student to see something that's possible, and vice
Mm-hmm.
versa. It's inspiring for students that have been going for a long time and that haven't had any difficulties to watch somebody that is working through a challenge. It's really inspiring.
Mm-hmm.
So I am really actually proud of the way that our community is practicing
Mm-hmm.
these days, especially now that I have more tools to serve with the yoga therapy.
Mm-hmm.
It's all the same to me, it's all the same. Yoga therapy is yoga, Ashtanga yoga is yoga. It's just like, do you need a hammer or do you need a screwdriver? Do you need a spoon? Do you need a fork? It's not, are you eating soup? Have a spoon. I don't think, a yoga is yoga is yoga. I don't think there's a hierarchy to it. I think that's a huge misperception. It's really
Mm-hmm.
challenging.
Yeah. And I feel like coming and seeing that, like joining and entering your Mysore room and seeing all of that happening in the same room, I feel like will break some of the people's stereotype they might have about what Ashtanga yoga is.
Yeah, I think one of
Mm-hmm.
the biggest misperceptions that I bump into with people that do know or have practiced yoga is that they think that they need to know something before they come in the room, or that they need to
Mm-hmm.
be at a certain level before they come in the room.
Mm-hmm.
And, that's not at all the case. I wouldn't
Mm-hmm.
be, what would I be? What good would I would be if everybody knew everything? What good
Mm-hmm.
would I be if everybody was already, at whatever level that, some imaginary level that exists?
Yeah.
So it really truly is, like a yoga school, and it's very individual. And it's really fun to teach. Oh my God, it's so fun.
Hearing you, speaking to you, and also listening to you talk about this with your teacher Chase in a couple of the podcast interview I listened to you, I
Mhm.
heard you talk about is, in the beginning, I feel like a lot of people might think like, oh, yoga therapy and Ashtanga, which is two of your background that you have, one of many, but two of the background you have. Initially, I feel like people think like, oh, that's such like contrasting two different skill sets or knowledge you have. But
Mm.
when you actually hear you talk about it, and when I start to think about it, it actually is so complementary because how Ashtanga Mysore room operates is like everybody's having their own practice at their own timing. They're not going, everybody's not practicing same sun salutation at the same time like a typical group yoga classes look like at the studio. So you are able to go around to your students and give each student like individualized help or explanation, answering questions, checking in with each student's individual, and how that
Mhm.
like is so well suited for you to be able to bring this yoga therapy tools. So it's initially people might think like, oh, that's so interesting. You have such a two different very, but then actually it
Yeah.
works so well in the Mysore room together.
Yeah. And I really think, that was what Krishnamacharya was doing all
Mm,
along was this individual instruction in a group setting. And that's
mm,
what the original Ashtanga was. The only difference, I actually think before the Westerners started to come to Patabi Joyce, it was a little bit more diverse. I know that he had yoga therapy students in with the students that were doing complete series. So,
mm,
there's these stories of he had a paraplegic student that would come in and he would teach her the breathing and he would help her with the movements. And
mm,
right next to her would be, somebody doing a full sequence on their own. And so it's not out of the realm. It's
mhm,
just that there haven't been people focusing in this way, I don't think. And I also
mhm,
think I think when it feels like the students of, and I can't say that the teachers were, because I never heard my teachers speak this way. I never heard
mhm,
Patabi Joyce or Sharat say ever, my way is the best way in regards to what Krishnamacharya had taught. Deshkachar got a different piece than Patabi Joyce. He really came to study with Patabi Joyce later in life. I mean, he was his son, but he studied after he had already finished his degree. And so there was an interest that he had when he came to learn from Krishnamacharya that was really based in, he said to his dad, I want to learn what this lady came barreling up to the home, and she had been cured of her insomnia by Krishnamacharya, and she was so grateful to him. And
mm,
Deshkachar saw that interaction between that woman and his dad and said, I want to understand this. I want to know how to heal people. And so he got a different piece than Patabi Joyce, who showed up as a teenager and studied. Patabi Joyce studied with Krishnamacharya for, I think, 20. It wasn't just in his teenage years. So there was a
mhm,
depth and a breadth there too, but he was focused more on the Hatha Yoga piece, the asana, whereas
mhm,
Deshikachar kind of really focused on the asana and the pranayama is there, but that third chapter meditation focus is really strong, you know,
mhm.
and Patabi
Yeah.
Joyce was more asana and pranayama. And the
Mhm,
meditation focus wasn't taught to us. I don't know if it was taught to other people. And then when you talk to
mm,
like, Iyengar, it's a totally different story. He didn't study that with Krishnamacharya
mhm,
that long, but he has a totally different focus. Indra Devi has a different
mhm,
focus. Ramaswamy has a different focus. So it's like all these,
mhm,
different pieces. I think where it gets weird is, like I said before, when somebody thinks that one of the pieces is better than the other. And it's really,
mm,
there's that quote, teach what you know to who's in front of you, not teach who's in front of you what you know. Does that make
mhm.
sense?
Yeah. Oh my God, that makes oh my when you said that, that's what I feel like a group yoga class is like.
Yeah,
Teach
exactly.
what you know to who's in front of you.
Yep. Yeah. And that's the difference right there between a
Yeah.
yoga studio and a yoga school. A yoga studio
Mhm,
is teach what you know to who's in front of you. And the the opposite in a yoga school is teach who's in front of you.
mhm.
It's more
Uh,
focused on the individual.
yeah,
And I mean
that
it
makes
it has to be just based on circumstance.
mhm. Yeah. I've been, When I first became a teacher, I was teaching a lot of many group classes, and
Yeah.
I think a lot of teachers go through that phase, and I learned a lot about teaching a group class. But now, last a couple of years, I'm kind of naturally what I'm noticed what's happening is I have more private clients that I teach 101, or I have smaller. Um, I teach a classical therapeutic accessible yoga class at one of the studio I
Yeah.
work at, and it's only 4 students maximum. So sometimes I get 2, sometimes 3, sometimes 4, but it's a small room where I get to individualize a little bit more than a bigger class. Now that I've been teaching more 101 or these small groups, I'm noticing and refining my skills to be able to teach where I'm individualizing the practice to the people in front of me.
Yeah. Yeah.
They're such a different skill set. Like teaching a group classes of 30 people in the room is so different. The skill sets that's required to do that is very different than being able to teach 101 or a group of 2 or 3 people.
Yeah.
One's not better or wrong, or one's right and one's wrong, but it's just a very different skill sets that's required
Yes.
to
Yes.
perform that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Mm.
It takes a long time to see.
Mhm.
And here, I feel like main job is, my job is paying attention. I just watch
Mm.
people and listen to people. They come in the room, I move around quietly, watching and listening what's happening,
Mhm.
and then I do what I need and I teach what is needed.
Mhm.
Um, and so, yeah, I think it takes a long time to develop that skill of watching
Mhm.
versus the skill of telling.
Mhm.
Does
Yeah.
that make sense?
Yes, and I feel like Mysore, where you have been facilitating for many years, it's probably a great place that you really learn how to watch
Oh,
people
yeah.
and how they
Yeah.
move and how they're breathing and their tendencies and, patterns and habits. I have a question. I think this is such an interesting question that I would love to hear your answer. Is as such a nuanced teacher like yourself who holds a Mysore room, who do 101, and you do have people come in and out with different expectations maybe, how do you balance between what you think from your perspective what this student need or may benefit from versus what they think they need or want?
I think that is also something that has taken a long time. I think when I was a younger teacher, not in age, but in teaching time,
Mhm.
especially in Mysore, I really felt like um, more the person had to uh, learn the method as opposed to now I feel like I need to learn the person.
Mm.
It's my job to learn the person so that I know how to teach them. And, some people's goals are completely valid, you know? And honestly, if somebody comes in and they're like, I want to be really strong, I want to be really mobile. You know what I mean? Those are
Mhm.
totally, I don't know about really mobile. I don't know if that would be so useful. But, if somebody's saying, I want my body and it's about their body, I want my body to be strong and flexible, I can meet that goal. And then, sometimes something else happens. And then we're on the path, right?
Mhm.
Sometimes something else happens when you're just working with breath and movement, building a healthy, strong, and mobile body, where there's a spark that happens that somebody's interested in the other limbs. They become interested in it.
Mhm.
And then it gets really fun, right?
Mm.
It is hard though. And I've made errors. I've lost students because didn't understand what their goals were. There's
Mm.
like a famous moment where, one of my students said, I don't think this suits me. And I said, I have to agree. And she said, it doesn't bring me any joy. And in that moment,
Mm.
didn't realize that joy was her goal, because that's not what she said. When she showed up, she said, I want to learn Ashtanga yoga. She
Mhm.
didn't say, I'm having a problem with joy in my life.
Mm.
And especially now that I have this, broader toolkit with the yoga therapy, I can meet that need. If somebody says, I don't have a lot of joy in my life, I
Mm.
can help. The yoga can help, I should say. I can
Mhm.
help facilitate the yoga in that situation. And so, conversation, which is,
Mhm.
a really good intake, which I don't think you ever get to have at a yoga studio. You're lucky
Mhm.
if you know their names. If they show
Mhm.
up on time,
Mhm.
if they get into class early enough for you to learn their name, right? Um,
Mhm.
but, a really in depth intake and continual conversation and watching and listening to their breath and noticing their patterns, you know, um, how do they show up? How do their, speech patterns, all of it, hair color. You
Mhm.
can really, start to understand what way using the tools of yoga, using asana in a specific way, using chanting and breathing. Did I tell you that I'm in another teacher training?
No, tell me, what teacher training are you in?
I'm my Veda teacher. I'm learning how to
Ah.
teach people to chant Veda and Vedic chanting.
How long is this training?
This one's 1 year. Only
Okay. I know you have mentioned a little bit here and there in the past that you might be offering, was it a chanting class or was it a Sanskrit class
so
that you were
I
thinking of
really,
offering?
really, 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 really want to teach teachers
Uh-huh.
Sanskrit and chanting for yoga so that,
Yes.
because the foundation of these teachings is in that Sanskrit, you know,
Mhm.
and if we're leaving it, we're missing a piece, a huge piece. And
Mhm.
so there is, some people say Sanskrit's not important. It's important. Some people say
Mhm.
pronouncing it incorrectly is not important. It's important. We need to give
Mhm.
some attention to these kind of things. And
Mhm.
so I've been working really hard to be able to learn how to teach these kind of things so that our community of Western yoga teachers can have a bit more understanding of the chanting and the Sanskrit and the names and the actual pedagogy of the yoga is in the Veda and in the
Mhm.
delivery of the chanting, the recitation of Veda,
Mhm.
the way that it's offered. It's all there. It's really beautiful. And so it's really important to reach back into the foundations and the roots of where the yoga comes from. So
Mhm.
I'm planning to teach Sanskrit and chanting for yoga, probably
Yes.
March. I haven't put it
Okay.
together all the way yet, but it'll probably be in March.
Okay.
Yeah,
I'm very much looking forward to that, and I know for sure a handful of people that would be interested in that too.
it's really fun.
Mhm.
It's just really fun,
And
especially
you are
getting
go ahead.
especially getting into the just the ways how the sound affects the central nervous system. The
Mm.
places, the points of contact in the instrument of speech that
Mhm.
actually vibrate and move and have an effect on the system. And I'm
Mhm.
mentioning this because, I was saying which tools are appropriate for people. This is a big tool. And maybe in yoga teaching, we're not using it as a tool that we prescribe yet, but as yoga teachers, we need to be understanding it and maybe having the experience for ourselves.
Mhm. Yeah, and I really appreciate that I learn a lot of the chanting or Sanskrit or even like the sutras pronunciation from you because you're very good at it. And now that I know how it can sound like, I really also want to say and pronounce it in the best as possible with my background. It may not be perfect, but like you really want to do your best to say it
Yeah.
properly. So
Yeah. Yeah.
that's exciting. Well, you have to let me know, and I'll let my people know when your thing is coming. The course is ready and ready for people to sign
Awesome.
up.
Awesome. Yeah.
Is there anything else that you would like to share with the listeners? Anything coming up for you? Anything from what we talked about today that you want to share?
No, it's just fantastic to talk to you, and it's always fun to talk to people that wanna get nerdy. It's always fun to talk to people that are interested in going a little bit deeper. There is
Yeah.
nothing wrong, again, I'm gonna reiterate it,
Mm,
having a background in PT and exercise science and sports medicine, etcetera, there's nothing wrong with it. When we're teaching, or I should say, and when we're teaching yoga, we should also understand that the yoga perspective.
mhm,
Otherwise, it just becomes PT or
mhm,
sports, and the one thing, the primary thing that makes yoga different is this idea of prana.
mhm,
It changes everything when you
mhm.
understand the body from that perspective.
Yeah.
And then the PT and the exercise science can support that, and it
Mhm.
becomes even more powerful.
I love that. Can I ask one more question?
Awesome.
Is there yoga therapy schools? Because there are multiples in United States. I'm sure there's more outside of United States, but does some yoga therapy school will have maybe a bigger focus on this more of a Western perspective of looking at health and yoga versus some schools might have more of a emphasis or put more value in this Indian philosophy of yoga anatomies, the subtle bodies? Like, is there distinct
Yeah.
differences in yoga therapy schools like that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think
Okay.
a lot of yoga therapist training programs are trying to work to meet the standards of the International Association of Yoga Therapists, so the IAYT. And there's a
Mhm.
lot of Western concepts in their standards. And so
Mm.
in order to be accredited, IAYT accredited school, you have to tick all the boxes that IAYT says to tick. And a lot of that is actually, unfortunately, moving
Mhm.
away from yoga and moving.
Mm.
There's a huge, I don't want to say scandal, but there's a huge rift happening right now in the yoga therapist community because IAYT is now offering yoga therapists certification to medical professionals. So if you have a medical degree, whether it's a nursing degree, doctor degree, whatever medical degree that you have, they're saying that you only need a 200 or 300 hour. I think it's a 300-hour training, and you can get a yoga therapist certificate.
I've heard of this discussions, and
Yeah,
a lot of people are very unhappy about that.
it's not
Mhm.
doing the yoga therapy justice.
Mhm.
And I understand why, they're the people that what I can understand is that IOAT is trying to make yoga therapy respected in
Mhm.
Western medicine communities. That's what it feels like. And
Mhm.
in doing that, I think some of the yoga will be lost.
Mm.
And there are different schools that have different emphasis and different focus. And I really think that, Vini yoga schools that are based in Krishnamacharya lineage, Ashtanga lineage, I think that hopefully you're going to get. I only know what I got from my teacher who really he tries to stay as based in Indian knowledge systems as possible when he goes forward
Mhm.
with the education, and still like straddling that fence and having to tick all the other boxes of like anatomy and physiology and disease diagnosis and all of that from a Western perspective. So I think
Mm.
I'm a graduate of Yoga Well Institute, which is Chase Bossard School, which I already mentioned. And so that school is definitely, they're yoga first.
Mhm.
And I feel like other programs, therapist training programs, might be, Western medicine or medical diagnosis first. I'm not sure because I
Mhm.
didn't take them, but
Yeah.
we'll see how it evolves. It's a really young organization, IAYT.
Mm. Mhm.
So we'll see what
Yeah,
happens.
we'll see what happens. Yeah, it's a very interesting discussions happening in the yoga therapy
Yeah.
world right now.
Yeah. It's weird.
But thank you so much for sharing about your yoga therapy experience and your teachers and the schools that you went through that you highly recommend.
I do.
Yeah, and I could say, like, I didn't take, Chase's I didn't go to his school, but I have been there in person when he came as a guest teacher to your shala to teach about Yoga Sutras, and I think he did another workshop on Gita, so that those and also Hatha Yoga Pratipika too, I was able to be
Yeah.
there for that,
Yeah.
so he is a great teacher, definitely, and
Yeah.
I'm just so
I,
lucky that I have you here in Long Beach that I get to learn directly from you.
oh, thank you. Yeah, I definitely credit him with a lot of putting the puzzle together for me.
Mm.
Yeah. All of my
Yeah.
teachers. I've been so lucky. I'm the most wealthy with teachers. My teachers are amazing. My Veda
Oh.
teacher, Shantala Maya, she's brilliant. Everybody's brilliant. I'm lucky.
Well, I feel very lucky to be able to call you my teacher. So thank you,
Oh,
Aimee,
thank
for
you.
sharing everything to your community here in Long Beach and beyond. It's such a valuable knowledge that you're sharing with us. And I think it's priceless how much you
Mm.
share. And it's such an important knowledge. There aren't that many people that I feel like can teach what you teach. So I think we're so lucky to have you here.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, and all that to say, if you want to study with Aimee, that you also do weekly sutra studies here in Long Beach that
It's
can be also
true.
joined via Zoom. So I highly recommend that to anybody who wants to go deeper on Yoga Sutras of Patanjali.
Yeah.
And if you want to practice with Aimee, you want to share a little bit about your shala?
Even if you want to come down and see just how it works,
Mm-hmm.
anybody, I always welcome people to come and observe because I think
Mm-hmm.
it's a really different experience than most people expect, even if they've got an idea of what a
Mm-hmm.
Mysore room, how it operates, how those
Yeah.
classes operate. I think it's really interesting to see in person. And for
Yeah.
teachers, it's actually super educational to come and see. So
Yes.
anybody's welcome to just hit me up, email me, info@ashtangayogalongbeach.com and come on down and just tell me you want to come and we'll schedule a time for you to visit. Or you can drop into my Yoga Sutra classes any Sunday at 9:30 a.m. Those are in person or on Zoom. No permission needed. And I also teach a guided class on Friday mornings that is more for folks that have really big lives that just want to have a meal with me.
Mm-hmm.
So it's the active series, which is the series that my teacher created before he passed on. And he did design it for people that have big lives that are but looking for yoga to support their lives, but not yet ready to make, a big transition to make their life support their yoga.
Mm.
So that's Fridays
Yes.
at 9:30 if anybody wants to come.
Yes, thank you. I'll link all of that on the show notes so people can get all of your information. Thank you so much, Aimee, for coming on and chatting with me. And I will speak to you soon.
My pleasure. Thank you. Thank you for all of your support, always.
I hope you enjoyed the conversation I had with Aimee. I really enjoyed this conversation I had with her. I almost wish I could have one-on-one, in-depth conversation with Aimee every week because I learn so much from her every time I speak to her. So she is so generous of coming on and giving her time to have this conversation, this podcast episode. So I hope you go check out Aimee's offering, especially if you live in Long Beach area and want to try the active series that she teaches on Friday, or maybe you've been interested in trying Ashtanga yoga. Go check out her website and also her weekly Yoga Sutra studies that happens on Sunday. It is in person and also live stream, so you could join the sutra studies from anywhere in the world. So I highly encourage you to check out Aimee's offering. If you enjoy this podcast, really appreciate it if you can like, subscribe, rate, star, review, anything that you can do on whatever platform you're listening to this podcast from. That means the world to me. But the best thing you can do is just share this podcast with your friends, with your yoga teacher, with your yoga community, your yoga friends. or you can share it on social media and tag me. My Instagram handle is at Reika Yoga, ReikaYoga. Or you can also message me. I like hearing from the podcast listeners. I've been meeting people out in the world who tells me that they listen to my podcast, and it means the world to me when anybody come up to me and share that you have listened to my podcast. It means a lot to me. I know it's something so simple, but like I said before, the podcasting can feel like I'm just speaking out into the void. It feels like no one's listening, although I know some people are listening, but we don't get a lot of feedback or we don't get a lot of signs of people listening as a podcaster. So I really love it if somebody who's been listening to this podcast will just say like, hey, I listened to this podcast, really love this conversation, or that conversation was interesting, or I think this. Like, I just love you sharing your thoughts about the podcast and different episodes I release. So feel free to always message me either on social media, Instagram, or you can message me on my website, www.reikayoga.com. And all the information about Aimee or the retreat that's coming up in Nicaragua will be on the show notes, so it'll be easy for you to find and click. And lastly, I want to say it again, this week, please do something to take care of yourself. Whatever it is that you can do to bring yourself back to balance so you can remember and return home to your spirit, your soul, who you truly are. And from that place, we can see the world a little bit clearly. And from seeing clearly, can we make action that counts? Can we take action that is going to be appropriate and meaningful for us and for the world? So that is it from me today. I hope you have a great rest of your day. And the podcast schedule from now on is going to be every other week. I'll be releasing on Monday. That's the goal for now. So I will speak to you in 2 weeks. Have a great day.